You stayed. Even when leaving would have been understandable. Even when no one would have blamed you for stepping back, for choosing distance, for choosing silence. You stayed. Not because it felt easy, not because the weight disappeared, but because something inside you refused to abandon what still mattered. You are still here. That alone says more than you realize. Some seasons don't try to break you all at once. They don't come crashing down loudly. They wear you down quietly. Through repetition. Through responsibility. Through days that look ordinary from the outside, but feel demanding on the inside. And you didn't leave. You didn't make a dramatic exit. You didn't announce how heavy it felt. He simply kept going. That kind of faith rarely gets applause, but God sees it. There is a strength that doesn't look powerful. It looks steady. It looks like continuing. When motivation has faded, but commitment remains. You didn't stay because you were unaware of the cost. You stayed knowing exactly what it was costing you. That matters. Psalms 73-26 says, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart, and my portion forever." Scripture doesn't deny fatigue. It acknowledges it openly. Your flesh may fail. Your heart may feel stretched thin, but strength doesn't disappear. It is supplied. Not always in a way you can feel immediately. Not always in a way that looks impressive, but enough. Enough to stand. Enough to choose restraint. Enough to remain when walking away would have been easier. You stayed. And God saw it. Some people assume staying means you weren't affected, that it didn't hurt, that it didn't demand anything from you. But staying often costs more than leaving. Leaving gives relief. Staying requires endurance. And endurance is never passive. Psalm 55:22 says, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you." Not remove every burden instantly. Not deny that the burden exists. Sustain you. To hold you from underneath. To keep you upright while the weight remains. That's the kind of help you've been receiving. You may not have felt lifted, but you were held. Held together in moments when emotions were fragile. Held steady when answers didn't come quickly. You learned how to function while tired. How to speak carefully when your mind felt full. How to continue showing up without losing yourself. That didn't happen by accident. God was sustaining you. Psalm 121:3 says, "He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber." The ground may have felt uneven, the path unclear, but you didn't fall. You adjusted your pace. You found balance where you could. You stayed. That doesn't mean you were never tempted to quit. It means quitting didn't win. You carried disappointment without becoming bitter. You carried pressure without becoming reckless. That is not weakness. That is maturity forming quietly. There is a difference between being broken and being worn from responsibility. Broken things fall apart. Worn things have been used faithfully. You were worn, not broken. You were entrusted with weight. and you carried it. Jesus spoke directly to people like you. In Matthew 11:28, he said, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." He didn't call those who escaped responsibility. He called those who labored, those who carried, those who stayed. Rest here is not an exit. It is relief that reaches the soul while life continues. Jesus doesn't minimize your exhaustion. He understands it. He doesn't shame you for feeling tired. He invites you to let him support you within it. You didn't stay because you were numb. You stayed because you were faithful. That distinction matters. Some seasons test your faith loudly, others test it quietly. This one tested your consistency, your ability to remain aligned. When clarity was delayed, waiting is continuing forward. Waiting without clarity changes the way you relate to yourself. It strips away the illusion of control and exposes what actually sustains you when answers are delayed. You begin to notice how much of your strength was never loud, never dramatic, but deeply rooted in discipline and trust. You stop asking every day when this will end, because you realize that endurance is not built by knowing the timeline, but by staying faithful inside uncertainty. You learn how to breathe through unfinished questions, how to move through days that feel unresolved without letting frustration dictate your decisions. That kind of waiting reshapes your inner posture. It teaches you to listen more carefully, to speak less impulsively, to choose your words with intention instead of urgency. You begin to recognize that not every silence is a setback. Some silences are spaces where God is doing work beneath the surface, work that doesn't need to be announced to be effective. Growth often happens quietly, away from attention, away from validation. Psalm 37:24 says, "Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." Stumbling does not mean failure. It means you felt the weight. It means the road required effort. But you were upheld. You didn't fall apart when the pressure increased. You recalibrated. You slowed down where needed. You strengthened what was weak instead of abandoning it. That response doesn't come from instinct. It comes from maturity shaped over time. You started choosing steadiness over relief, integrity over reaction, faithfulness over escape. Those choices may not have felt rewarding in the moment, but they built something resilient inside you. They taught you how to remain grounded when emotions wanted to take over, how to stay aligned when circumstances felt unstable. Psalm 94:18 says, "When I said my foot is slipping, your unfailing love, Lord, supported me." There were moments you sensed your footing wasn't as secure as before. Moments when doubt crept in quietly. Moments when fatigue made everything feel heavier than it needed to be. But support arrived. Not always as relief. Sometimes as restraint. Sometimes as calm in the middle of pressure. God's support often shows up as the ability to remain composed when everything inside wants to react, as the strength to keep your character intact when circumstances test it. You learn that staying doesn't mean ignoring the weight. It means carrying it wisely. Knowing when to pause. Knowing when to proceed slowly. Knowing when silence is more powerful than explanation. That wisdom did not come cheaply. Psalm 112:7 says, "He will have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord." Steadfast doesn't mean unaffected. It means anchored. You didn't stop feeling. You stopped letting every feeling control you. That shift matters. You became more attentive to what truly deserves your energy. You stopped pouring yourself into what couldn't sustain you. You became selective, not hardened. And that selectiveness protected you. You stayed present in a season that demanded emotional regulation more than emotional expression. You carried responsibility without turning it into resentment. You held tension without letting it define you. Those are marks of deep formation. God was not absent while you waited. He was shaping endurance that could hold future weight, preparing you to remain stable when pressure returns. Because pressure always returns. What you built in silence will support you later. You stayed. Not passively. Intentionally. And God saw every decision you made to remain aligned when deviation would have been easier. Nothing in this season was random. Nothing was overlooked. The strength you are carrying now is not temporary. It is foundational. And it will last. And you did that. Isaiah 40:31 says, "Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength." Waiting is not inactivity. Waiting is choosing not to force outcomes, not to rush decisions, not to let fear dictate direction. That kind of waiting takes strength, and strength has been renewing quietly inside you. You may not feel dramatically different, but you are steadier, less reactive, more grounded. You don't respond to every pressure anymore. You've learned discernment. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." And you guarded your heart. Even when disappointment tried to harden it, even when delay tempted you toward frustration, you stayed soft without becoming weak. That balance is rare. God saw it. He saw the nights you went to bed tired and still chose faith. He saw the mornings you got up without enthusiasm, but with commitment. Nothing about that was wasted. Psalm 66:10 says, "For you, O God, have tested us. You have refined us like silver." Refining doesn't destroy what matters. It removes what can't last. Silver survives the heat. It becomes clearer because of it. You're clearer now. More aware of your limits. More intentional with your energy. More honest about what truly sustains you. This season didn't make you smaller. It made you deeper. You stayed. And God saw it. He saw the restraint in your words, the discipline in your choices, the faith that didn't need to be announced. There were prayers you never spoke out loud, questions you carried silently. God heard them all. Silence did not mean absence. Sometimes silence means formation. You are being formed into someone who can carry weight without losing integrity. That kind of strength doesn't draw attention, but it lasts. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to justify how hard this was. God already knows the cost. And He honors faithfulness. Even when no one else notices, you stayed. And God saw it. You're still standing. And that matters. If this message spoke to you, like the video, share it with someone who stayed when it was hard, and subscribe for more devotionals like this. And if you feel led, leave a comment saying, "I stayed." May His peace find you today.